Caught me saying, a little whiskey and honey, take care of it. And again, we chuckle because it's kind of funny, because our modern knowledge and conceptions have enabled us to know that Windex may not be the best cure for acne, and whiskey and honey, other than the fact that it's alcohol and will probably relax you, may put a small child to sleep, this may not really be doing anything. But this is the question. Going back to what is knowledge? If Mr. Portocalis and my grandmother, and I'm sure somebody in your family, if not yourself, believes in this, then the question we need to be asking is why? In the early modern era, going back again, 400 years, medicine was twofold. Either remedies that were small books, fit in the palm of your hand, they were about this big. Think 4 inches across and about 5 inches tall. They were cheaply printed, and they were printed a lot. Book historians have done a really fabulous job of trying to recreate the early modern printing era. And with very scant resources, they've managed to figure out that these little texts were printed on speculation, when the cost of paper and ink was astronomical. To put something out on speculation meant they had a really good idea somebody was going to buy it. About 30% of all books published from 1490 to 1650 in England were these small technical texts. These were everywhere. One of the questions that always comes up when I start to talk about reading in medicine and little books in that era is people automatically assume everybody was literate or illiterate. Completely untrue. Again, book historians and some literary scholars have done a fantastic job in showing that early modern society was anything but illiterate. That everyone in some manner was exposed to either the written word or the oral word. And these books were meant to be read orally to one another. So you have remedies, but you also have regimens. This is the theory. This is where it tells you about ways to take care of yourself, and it gives you the theories of the day. And the theories of the day happen to be based on Galenic and Hippocratic corpus, the humors. Everything's got to be in balance. There are 4 of them: hot, dry, cold, moist. I'm sanguine, by the way, if you're wondering. I diagnosed myself. So that means, since I am sanguine, if anything goes wrong, and if I start to see, I'm supposed to always stay a little hot and moist, and if that's a little off, then I got to counter that. And I counter that normally through food, which is something else that the regimens told you about. Which foods were hot, and which ones were cold, and which ones were moist, and which ones were dry. So that when I had a problem, I knew what to go to my kitchen. If you think back a few slides to the kitchen. I went to the kitchen and managed to make whatever it happened to be to get myself back in balance. Okay, so again, you're probably thinking, Mother of God, this is just all poppycock. Maybe. It's poppycock people believed in. Here are 3 definitions of humoral theory. This one way over here is from a manuscript that you can find in the British Library, and it dates to around 1300. Then those are the 2 texts that I look at a lot, and these texts were printed from around 1520, are you ready, to 1635. So for over 100 years, these books were printed, a lot of them, maintaining this whole concept of health and healing. Pepper's one of my favorite foods now, because it's like a miracle cure for anything. I can tell you all sorts of ways you can use it. But here are 3 different ways of using it, and it tells you the qualities. And what's really interesting about this, I know this is kind of hard to read, this manuscript is from around 1400, and these, again, are examples from the 2 texts that I look at a lot. There are major similarities between them. They talk about the same sort of virtue, that they're hot, that they have the general properties of what it will do to your body. you have the jaundice, here's your cure, right here. And the jaundice in the early modern era is not our modern conception of jaundice. This normally has to do with some sort of pain in the area back here. And these are 3 different versions of a remedy for jaundice, dating from around 1450 to the printed text. And you will notice that they have the ones on each end. You're talking about using Spanish soap and a little stale ale. You mix that together, then you drink it. But the key is not only do you drink it, you're going to feel better. You're going to be whole again. Because early modern medicine, very different from modern medicine, was all about the whole body. The whole body being mind, body, and spirit. So these notions of you shall be whole was this idea that you would spiritually, physically, and mentally regain your balance. If you suffer from the cough, having just been coughing a lot lately, there were a few days I was wondering if I could get a hold of some of this stuff because nothing else was seeming to work. But again, Medical Society 136 is a manuscript from around 1400 and 2 others from the printed text showing the similarities. And this one also validates the cure and showing it has been proved. So those were kind of the basic ideas of big medicine. But this other concept of bloodletting was everywhere. Bloodletting solves any problem. Any problem, no matter what it is. From the smallest thing to the biggest thing. If you suffer from migraines, I can tell you where to put the leech to solve the problem. Just in case you need that for later reference. This is an image from around 1325. Again, it's an illuminated capital letter from a manuscript, and it is showing the act of cupping, which is where you bleed by puncturing, and then you gather the blood together because you may need that blood later for something else. I've looked at hundreds of manuscripts all over the world, and I've looked at hundreds of texts. And the one thing that was striking to me as I kept looking and seeing these things when it came to bloodletting is they agreed. And these are manuscripts that come from all over different places. From the Arabic region, all over Europe, from the East, even ones that ended up circulating and landed in America, they agreed on certain days. These were some of the days that they agreed on. You never want to let blood on the first Monday of August. You surely will die. And this is the type of language that they give. They talk about it in very common and everyday language, and very direct. You're either going to live or you're going to die. And the good days, there aren't as many good days that are specific except for April the 21st. Mary Beth and I just had this long conversation about April the 21st. Because we were complaining that we were both feeling a little under the weather, and it was like, well, the 21st is coming up. We'll just let blood, and that shit's on all the times. Again, we refused to do it. And again, here is another great example of bloodletting and what it can do for you. The knowledge that people believed in. You will never be blind. If you let blood on the 18th day of March in the right arm, and on the 11th day of April in the left arm, and you will assure yourself that you will never, ever go blind. People in the early modern era were obsessed with their eyes for a variety of different reasons. In literary scholarship, you see a lot of references to the metaphor of sight and being able to see the problems within the empire and all of those sorts of things. The obsession with sight goes all the way back to the 1100s and 1200s, and I don't really have a great explanation for you, but I can tell you that there are at least 20% of all the books have remedies specific to the eyes. So if you want to ensure that you're not going to go blind, here's your solution.